Hello everyone. About a month or so ago, I bought a Gigabyte Brix Pro i5 version, and like many of you, I'd seen the reviews on them where they were so incredibly loud. Sounded like little hair dryers or something. And so I got the idea of modding it to put in a different, quieter fan and to also see if that helped with cooling. So let's take a look at what I did. In this picture we can see that I've got the stock fan on the right and the Noctua NF-A8PWM fan on the left. It's supposed to be a very nice quiet fan. Goes up to 2000 RPM and has just pushes more CFM air than the stock fan does. We'll see how it does at cooling. It's a bit taller than the stock fan by about a centimeter or so, so we'll have to make some case modifications. And at the top you can see the heatsink and the motherboard is still attached. In the next slide we'll see what I do further. In this picture you can see I've got the heatsink torn off, and I was taking a look at the thermal compound on it and it actually looks pretty good. They did a good job with it. Obviously I replaced it now. I replaced it with some Noctua thermal compound, so we'll see how that does. And I've got the fan, just a very nice clean looking fan. I hope it'll do a good job. In this picture you can see a couple of things. Number one, I've got the top of the case marked off with a tracing of the outline of the fan that I need to cut. Need to cut a hole in the top of the case because the fan actually is going to stick out the top about a centimeter. The other thing you can see on this picture is in the lower right hand corner you can see the cable adapter I needed to make. The fan header on the Noctua fan is just a standard full-size plug-in, whereas the fan header on the Brix is very small. You can see it in white. So I had to cut and splice the wires that came with the stock fan, and I spliced it to an extension cable or an extension cord that came with the Noctua fan. Here you can see that I've got my hole cut. Also, you'll notice that I've covered the entire top with blue masking tape. I definitely suggest going a couple of layers deep with the masking tape if you're going to do this. I was using a Dremel with a cutoff tool, and the Dremel, I scuffed my case in a couple of places, so I definitely suggest going with more masking tape than I did. But the hole turned out pretty nice and clean, that's for sure. We'll take a look at that in more detail coming up. Here we are with a nice clean looking hole cut out of the top of the case. You can see maybe a couple of spots where I scuffed the top, but I've also got the Noctua fan mounted to the motherboard, and with my little adapter cable there on the left, I've mounted the Noctua fan to the heatsink with 4 zip ties just running across the corners. You can see that on the lower left hand corner of the fan there. I cut off the corner of the lower left hand of the fan so that I could avoid the power button when I mounted it, because it's going to come up from the top. Here you can see that the fan is everything is installed inside the case. It's all ready to go. Turned out really nice, I think. You can see that with the power button back in, that if I hadn't cut that corner off, it would have come in really close, and it actually would have interfered with the power button a little bit. So if you guys are gonna do something similar, I definitely suggest doing the same, or maybe you can mount it in a little bit different spot to avoid that power button. But otherwise, I think it turned out really well. Here's another picture of it. I just wanted to put a fan guard on there, so when I have it mounted on the back of my monitor, I won't actually accidentally stick my fingers in it, or something like that. Safety first. Here's the final results. It's all hooked up and running. Looks great. Super quiet. We'll see how the cooling looks in just a second. I've got a couple of benchmarks to show you. The first group of benchmarks I want to show you is the baseline I took before I made any changes. Up here are, on the left hand side is the open hardware, and on the right hand side is RealTemp version 3.7. This was taken as I was running RealTemp's sensor test, where it runs Prime 95 and takes average temperatures over a bunch of different CPU percent usages, and you can see that in the lower right hand corner box. You can see that at almost full load, we've got a range between and that's degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius at the top. You can see that we've got between 5 and 10 degrees until it starts to thermal throttle. Not unexpected, I think everybody knows that. And the fan is crazy spinning and very loud. Here's the benchmark that I took right after installing the fan. And unfortunately the results are pretty darn disappointing as far as cooling goes, but not as far as quieting the fan goes. The fan's very quiet. It was running at max, so 2288 RPM, and still nearly silent. However, it runs hot. You can see that under about the same CPU load, average distance to thermal max, again 100 degrees Celsius, a lot less, so it's running a lot higher average temperature. This time, instead of 10 degrees, it's now 3 degrees. And you can see it throttled. It hit two of the cores 2 and 3, actually hit 100 degrees Celsius, so not good. You can see that on the left hand, the open hardware monitor too. 97, 98, 100, 100 were in the CPU package, registered 100 degrees, and it throttled. It said the clock modulation is 12.5%. So pretty darn disappointing, so I really can't recommend this if you're looking for something that'll help cool it. Maybe water cooling? I don't know. But like I said, fan silent, but the Gigabyte Brix Pro will run even hotter than it used to. I should say that this is running with the BIOS controlling of the fan settings. So the next step is to find a piece of software that will allow me to run my own fan profiles. Let's take a look at that next. In this picture I wanted to share with you, I had purchased a program called Argus Monitor. It's version 3.2.07, and with it I was able to create my own fan profiles so that I didn't have to run with the BIOS controlling my fan. And I think the results are pretty promising. With a maximum fan speed of 2265 RPM, none of the cores hit 100 degrees or throttled out. At 100%, the average distance to thermal max was 7 and 4, 5, and 7. So I think that's great. It's back down to pretty much stock fan levels. And if I think I continue to tweak my fan profile, I'll be able to get it down even further. But my fan profile is basically just a straight line that ramps up very quickly to 100%. I think it ramps up much more quickly than the BIOS did when it was controlling it. So I think that that's pretty promising. I've got a very quiet Gigabyte Brix Pro now with temperatures that aren't any worse, I would say, than the stock fan was. So win-win. I just have one final group of 3 benchmarks, and this is Cinebench. This is pre-mod, and I was really trying to see if changing out the stock fan for this Noctua fan would have any difference at all on CPU or performance difference with Cinebench. And so here are the results. Pre-fan running at 42 frames per second, and the CPU is coming up at 454. Here is the post Noctua fan mod with the BIOS controlling the fan. I don't know, a little bit of a difference. I'm not sure if it's meaningful. Frames per second went up 1, and the CPU benchmark went from 454 to 459. Like I said, I don't think that tells us anything at all, one way or the other. And finally, here is the Cinebench benchmarks run with Argus monitor controlling the fan. And this one, I was actually worried about the CPU overhead of the monitoring software, constantly monitoring and ramping and running the fan and monitoring the temperatures to see if I was going to take a hit in performance, and I didn't. In fact, if anything, the CPU performance continued to grow. It went from 454 to 459 to now 461. And frames per second went up another couple. But still, they're so close. I don't know that I've gained any performance. I think it's probably just within within the error boundaries. So I don't know that I can tell one way or the other about performance, other than I haven't lost any, so it appears. So looking back, was this mod worth it? Should you do it? For me, it was worth it. I've got a really nice, quiet running Gigabyte Brix Pro now that I don't get complaints about it being too loud. With running at still hot, but at least stock temperatures, and I haven't lost any performance. So win-win there. It wasn't straightforward. I had to do some cutting and some cutting the case open. Had to do some soldering. So if you're not comfortable with that and you don't care about the noise, then yeah, it's probably not worth it. So kind of a toss-up. For me, yeah. For you, well, I don't know. Good luck with your decision. At least I've hopefully given you some information to make a more informed decision with. Thanks everyone. Bye.